Alright, so next topic is about observable objects, and we want to make listeners for those objects. You can add a listener to process a value change in an observable object. An instant observable is known as an observable object, which contains the add listener, it validation listener method for adding a listener. Once the value is changed in the property, a listener is notified. The listener class should implement the invalidation listener interface, which uses the invalidated observable method to handle the property value change. Every binding property is an instant observable. So let's look at the observable property demo. So we create a balance. So now this is like a double number, like a double class, but this is a double property class, just like to represent a double values. But in observable, we like to use it as a property. So this is from a simple double property, right? We call that methods. And we want to make it listen. We can just, now when we do double property, then we can add listener to that balance when it's changed. Right. So new invalidation listener. This is like an anonymous inner class where you add listener to the balance, which is an object of the double property. And when it's changed, it's going to fire this event invalidation listener. And invalidation perhaps has the invalidated methods as abstract, which has the primary observable. And then we can just say the new value is balance.double value. And we can do balance.set. So let's test this code. So I'm going to create new class name observable property demo. And this class we're gonna do the same. We're gonna have the main method and we're gonna run this public static main string. There she is. And we're gonna use double property. This is like just represent a double, right? New simple double property. When you create an object of double, but double itself you cannot add events to it, but double property you could add events to the values. Public static void main. So we're gonna make this add the events dot add listener. This is going to be, so it said here, instant observable is known as observable object, which contain the add listener. You can do add listener, which I did add listener, right? Once the value is changed in the property, a listener is notified. So if the value of this change. So let's take a look at observable double property a little bit. Okay, I want to look at the oracle here. I just want to see it is actually number expression based, double expression, read only double property, right? And see that it implement observable. So that means it's just an object observable. So if it's an object observable, then it has an access to add listener, right? Because when it's observable, then you have the methods add listener right there. So that's why we can add listener to this object balance. Okay, once that add listener, right, contains the invalidation listener method for adding a listener. So go back and look at, you see, add listener has invalidation listener, right, which will be notified whenever observable becomes invalid. If the same listener is added more than once, it will be notified more than once. No check is made to ensure uniqueness. So pretty much just that invalidation listener used for notifications. Once the value is changed in the properties, listener is notified. The listener class should implement the invalidation listener interface, which uses invalidated method to handle the property value change. So in the invalidation listener, you are required to implement the invalidated methods with the observable value, right? So that's what it means here. Alright, every binding property is an instance of observable. So now we understand that principle. So come back. When you say this is an observable object, then you have an add listener. Add listener requires you to implement the invalidation listener. So that's why we have to do new invalidation listener here, right? And it's require you to implement the invalidated method, because that's an interface. You have to implement the method invalidated, right? Because we do new interface right there, right? Invalidation listener is an interface, right? Then required to implement invalidated methods. And this method needs to be provided by an implementation of invalidation listener. Alright, so now come back. So we're going to implement it now. So whatever we want to do, we can just do it here. Process the events. Listen, the whole concept is something changed to balance. It's going to do it here, right? System.out.print and say balance change. Well, you can do anything, but I just notify, hey, balance change. Now, this one pretty much just get the balance double values. I set the balance to 4.5. So let's get the concatenate to that, then we see the values. Double values, right? Because this is double. Alright. And we said, hey, it's going to change, and then we change the balance right here. Dot. Set the new balance to 9.5, something like this. So let's run this application. Balance change to 9.5, right? Set. So this is pretty much just simple double values. But make your double values listen. Before you cannot listen, now it's listen, it's change. Let's print out the double value first. Just like you do create balance as double, give the value 6.9 to it. Just like that, like double balance like that. But primitive type, you cannot make the listener listen to the change of the values, right? Like this is the values that you change. Like I want to see if whenever my balance changes, it notify me or do something. Like this is good application when you do like bank, where your balance is dropped down below $500. So it's listen to that balance and notify you through email. So it can do this instead of system.out, send emails. That's how you write a code here. Like balance, when you do like this is just like a primitive type, just say equals to 6.9. But with that, you cannot add listeners. With the double property here, you make it able to add the listeners, right? Like now when I do have to do get the values, right? To print out balance dot. Let me try get values here instead of double values. So like this is like system.out.print line, right? Balance. But primitive type itself, you cannot add listener. Now we could. Let's say when first time I start my balance with 1,000, right? If it happened to be something happens, someone withdraw the balance, so the new balance has to be changed. So once it's changed, it can listen and notify me, right? By add listeners to 500. Right, it was 1,000. Now balance changes to 500. It to 1,000, and I just print the values, right? And if the balance never change, then listener will never get being called. Let's say if I do just say system.out.print line int, right? So run it. It's going to say 1,000 and int because balance never change. But when I add the listeners to it, before I didn't add the listeners, so it's never notify me the change. So once I add a listener to it, I make the balance change to maybe someone withdraw it and it's dropped to 500, right? So I have to do like, we didn't create a complete application. So withdraw happened here, right? From the balance. And it's dropped below 500, right? Which we already set notification. Withdraw less drop, right? So we said, we add listener here, validated, was change if, right? If balance dot, like double value, okay, less than 500, then we gonna send notification, balance change, like below 500, and then your actual balance show up, right? Else it's not going to notify. So let's say I'm going to do like withdraw a little bit to 900, never notify, right? Right. So of course I want to print end balance after withdraw, right? Because it's not dropping below, right? So that's how we do change events, and we can get the balance dot double values. Now if I change, let's run again, right? So end balance is 900, but if I change it below 500, so someone withdraw money below 500, it get notified, hey, balance change below 500 is 300, end balance is 300. So that's how we add listener to the values of the balance, which is double. With a primitive data type or wrapper class double, you cannot do this. You have to use double property to make listener to it and add listener and invalidated method to change.